Alright, so here we are back in Maya, and what I'm going to start doing is posing out our character a bit more to start developing out our sequence or story. This is our hero pose, so he comes landing in like we were talking about, but naturally he needs to fall into the area. That is number one. So very much like what I was talking about before, I never saw it on 0. I always give myself at least 100 frames to work with, to start off with. And whenever I start with actual doing poses, I don't like seeing a big timeline like this. I actually really condense it down to about 10 frames or so. That way, each one of my poses is on a frame. And the reason I do that is that I don't want to worry about things like timing. I don't even want the timeline there, like a long timeline, so I can start, kind of guessing at that. I don't want to do that just yet. I want to just focus primarily on my posing for now. So what I'm going to do is give it a few frames and say, like, let's call that like 3 frames in here, and say that's the pose that he lands in. People have GUI pickers. They like to pick the GUI. That's cool. That's fine. I like just being able to shift select and grab everything. I always, very rarely, it's funny, very rarely do I feel comfortable with saying I always do something in terms of animation, but this is something I do feel very comfortable with saying, is that I always, whenever I'm blocking in my poses, I key every single control that's on the character. I don't leave any out. And I want to have, it's almost like working with mocap, where there's a key on every single control. I don't like leaving things, loose. Like, for instance, say I have a key on this guy, and then, post some other stuff, and, I don't key him again until a few frames later. Well, whenever I do the in-between frames, all of a sudden it's interpolating between this one and that one. And you might say, like, well, why don't you just do step curves? And it won't actually pop until that frame. Sure, but the instant, at some point, you're going to be changing your curves to interpolate differently, whether it's to linear or Bezier, and you're going to have yourself a problem. It's going to be floating off there. All right, so let's start working this out. I would like to have this guy come flying in, landing in. We're going to go ahead and just change all that. This is another thing that I particularly like to do, and that is whenever I'm working on my poses, I'm not afraid to set everything to 0 in the character. It just helps out, not worrying about counter animating in any fashion. It's kind of like unwinding the character. Just makes it a bit easier to get the new pose that you want. So I'm actually going to do the impact pose, just like when you're doing a bouncing ball. Right before the ball actually makes impact onto the ground, there's or I should say the squash, there's that impact that happens, in which we really stretch, the form. And so naturally you're saying, like, well, that doesn't really look like an impact. No, you're totally right. What I'm doing is just kind of setting my sights up. Again, changing things to 0, totally fine with. And there could be a thought that, you would say, shouldn't you not change it to 0, because you're going to want to have the exact moment, or in spatial relation to where that foot is going to be hitting. And I would say sure. However, there's something that we learn from 2D animation, or the process of 2D animation, and that is constantly looking at your poses one after the other. I have a great story about when I was in school learning 2D animation, and we used to use light boxes to cheat, to see what a previous pose was, and they really wanted you to do rolling and flipping. And very much like this. And you could use the arrow keys, or I should say comma and period keys, not the arrow keys. The brackets above, I call it arrow keys because of that. I probably just completely irritated a bunch of engineers if they were to hear me. If I have any engineers listening to this, watching this tutorial, I sincerely apologize. I believe those are referred to as brackets. There's many times I'm pretty certain that my engineer buddies that I work with just kind of roll their eyes when I start making comments on things like that. Let's see here. So what I'm doing, I like to keep things very loose. With this pose, I like to go down a road with this. Like right now I'm having like this C shape, almost like this S shape. I could push that more if I wanted to, but I'm looking at it and I don't like it already, because this hand is the one that is going to be making impact to the ground. And if I look at it, this is already kind of favoring the ground. So what I would rather do is change this so that with this contrapposto, I can get this shoulder being the one that is tilted up. Which means I'm going to have to change the legs, which is totally fine. Completely fine. That happens. Some people like to draw it out. Some people, like myself, I really do enjoy doing the poses in 3D. I've had a lot of mentors in the past always say like, draw it out, get used to drawing out, thumbnailing, and sure, yeah, I mean, I would, on occasion, do that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. However, I just feel much more comfortable getting in and moving the character around. I feel as if it's a bit more of a strength for me. Where, in the end, it doesn't really matter. I make this comment often. It doesn't really matter how you get there, as long as you get there. Kind of like life. If we can be a little bit of meta with ourselves here, as long as you get there in the end. And one of the big issues too with doing, posing the character out, is that I don't get a chance when I'm doing it on paper and such to see how it relates in the camera. I'm a huge fan of the perspective of what we're looking at. And naturally right now we do not have the camera in here. We can get that in later once we refine a little bit of our poses. But for the most part when we start, I like to just try to get that sense of the hero pose in there. And as opposed to worrying about so many other things, I try to compartmentalize That's a hard word to say. Compartmentalize. But I try to really focus on one thing at a time. Again, a bit like life. But as opposed to worrying so much about things like the composition with the camera, with the character for right now. Or, see, now I'm starting to feel this. Now, to finish that thought up, as opposed to worrying so many things like the composition of the character and then timing of the animation, I just want to work on just very specific poses to tell that story. So I'm starting to feel this. And what I would like to do in this right here is really push contrapposto. And what that is just the twisting that occurs between the shoulders and the hips. And what I want to do is, if the hips are going one way, the shoulders are going to go the other way. So in this instance, it'd be very much like this. And we can adjust here, move this over, and it moves in a couple of vertices this way as well as rotating. So if I want this to be back like this, then this is going to be really moving forward. I think I grabbed two there. There we go. Really moving forward. I might be pushing it too much, but you know what? I would much rather go too far and pull back, as opposed to saying, gosh, it's just not getting there. I'm just not getting the energy I want. But always keep in mind we have three vertices that we can be working with. X, Y, and Z. And keeping things loose like this really allows you to experiment, see what works for you. I think we should have this hand right here almost in front of the body, almost like he's doing like a wind-up type of pitch. Right in front of the body, very much like he's about to pitch a ball. You know, you really cross the body with it to really help with that twist that you get to gain some power. Let's move the elbow out here. We're getting there, but we can push this. This shoulder will come forward. I'm actually feeling as if he should be leaning back a little bit. Really just get the hand to look down. Let's keep him on the right. There we go, a little bit better up there. Let's keep him on a plumb line right there, so we know where we're going. This part is fun. This part is enjoyable. I love this part. This is where I'm kind of finding it, finding that pose, finding how it works, and I have a loose idea in my mind what it should look like. And here's the thing, I mean, a lot of times there's something in animation that's called feeling the pose, as opposed to seeing the pose. You feel it over seeing it, and you might not even register this. You might not even register, your eye might not catch it unless you freeze frame it. This character coming in, but you're definitely going to feel it. And that's what you would rather. You would rather the audience, your viewer, feel that impact. There we go. It's a little bit better. I still feel as if some things are just not as strong. So let's see if we can push that a little bit more. Maybe actually it's the feet. And then the arms. That's better. I can get this guy a little bit more upright right here. There we go. I'm feeling that a little bit more. Let's see if we can get a stretch with this foot a bit. Then we can use this guy to just really push more of that. Now I wanted this to be the exact moment right before he makes impact. So that means that we're going to just move him down. Let's move this guy down a bit. Oops, we got the hips there. Grab those hips. It'll probably be a little bit more this way if we're looking at it. Accentuate that a little bit more. There we go. This is more of that C shape, that S shape I was looking to get. And in my mind, I'm already thinking about how these poses are going to translate from one to the next. You know, we want to have this kind of feeling to really show impact and power. And I'm definitely seeing, you know, that translate to changing of the shape, going from C shape, you know, to, you know, really have that C shape going this direction to right before it actually hits, we're going to see the arm coming down, giving that much more of a sense of power before landing into that big shot right there. You know, and then we have the feet going wide, which is nice. Really give that, you know, that sensation where, much like a bouncing ball, we want to have things nice and tight. So we're getting the stretch, and then in that stretch goes into the squash. Boom. And just, of course, just like a bouncing ball, we'll get a little bit of compression and settle and all that. But right here is kind of like our power, our main-ish area. Alright, so not bad. And of course, always remember you can always refine. Refining is absolutely allowed. Now let's give a key before that, where he's actually starting the fall. And that just means he's going to be up much higher. You might say, well, how high? Well, good question. We're going to take a look at this as it stands, as we have it right here. And if we have to adjust, we will, and I'll show you some tips on how to do that too. Now, I definitely don't want to have him, you know, falling like a statue into the ground. I still want to maintain that power, that sense of power as he's coming through. So what's going to happen is, even though his trajectory is going down, we're going to rotate these hips. We're actually going to completely, let's see, change this to 0. Good. We're going to go ahead and change that rotation to 0 so I don't have to counter animate so much. Make it easier for myself. Always make things easier for yourself. Same thing here. There we go. Make that easier. So we have this nice C shape going this direction into the fist pounding. So the C shape is going this way. I'm actually going to have more of a C shape going the other way while I'm up here. Almost like he's winding up that hand for that big impact. And I think it'll be fun if we, really look for contrast in shapes. So let's get this knee twist that way. Maybe his feet are up a little bit higher and he kind of extends them as he's getting lower. I'm thinking like Batman Falls kind of thing. It's kind of cool. And he really gives that nice stretch to the body. And the fun thing is, and again, always go back to 0 on your, values, because you just don't want to fight. You want to take each pose as if it's own. You know what I mean? You don't have to fight with the decisions that you made before. Man, I really feel as if I'm giving a talk about life. Animation reflects life so much. Don't take in the decisions that you made in the past. Start anew. You guys didn't know that you're going to be getting much more than just an animation and cinematography lesson in this tutorial, did you? Well, added benefits. Those are bonuses. Change that to 0 as well. Again, I don't want to counter animate. I don't want to have to fight what I did before. Set it to 0. Totally fine. Because then you're going to be just spending more time counter animating and never really getting to the issue at hand, which is I really want to just focus on this pose. I don't want to worry about the last pose. I mean, of course it's in your mind, but you start diving into, well, the chest was rotated. I have to unwind that and this. No, don't worry about that. Just focus on the matter at hand. Okay. I'm thinking this is getting to a point where I'm happy. Look at this. If I were to take a step back, I'll figure out what to do with that arm in a second. What I'm going to do, I'm going to have the arms up so that we can do a little bit more of a squash with this. The body is kind of tight. Again, think about a bouncy ball. All those lessons that you learn in the first part of animation, bouncing ball, pendulum, the leaf drop, all of those, they really do teach you the core mechanics of animation. And even at a higher level, when we start getting into really in-depth shots and such, those core principles really shine through, and they really, they still, there's still tenets that you should abide by. Okay, kind of like this. You know what I also like doing as well? I like giving myself guidelines. I like making things easy for me. And let me show you something I'm going to do. Create here just a cylinder. Okay, turn it that way. I want that to be 90, that's fine. Let's keep everything. I don't want things lopsided just yet. Okay. Now I'm going to make a really tall, let's go like 200 here, boom. Okay. Make this smaller. And what we're going to do is kind of give us a guideline. If you guys have seen my other tutorials, I'm very, very big on helping yourself out and adding guidelines to things. And let me show you what I mean. As he comes down, I already see that this hip right here goes into here. I want to essentially show where the weight is. Where is his center of balance? His center of balance is right around the belly button. And not where the hand lands, but right where essentially the belly button is. And there's some really awesome action studies in which, you know, you can take a look at center of gravity and such. And it's what you want to do is everything essentially revolves around that. So right here, we're gonna get it to right about the navel area. And this is where this guy is falling. Okay. And this is going to serve as a guideline. And right about there, a little bit up. That's good. Okay. And I can add it to the floor. So I can't select this. But what this is going to do for me is that as I step through, I can make sure that I can line it up. See, this is already a little off. Thank you very much, Mr. Guideline. You're showing me where I should be. More so than just, you know, hey, go straight down. I want to follow my line of action, oops, this guy back here. He should be following along that path. Or I should say his center of gravity should be following around that path, which is right around the navel area, right about there. There we go. And maybe even a little bit more. We can push this back a little bit right here. Just so that we see it's almost, you know, the navel area right here is, boom, making impact right where I want it to be. It feels better. So up here we can do a little bit more squash in the feet. I need to twist out just a little bit more. Yeah, I'm starting to like that. That's feeling good. Now, notice I'm not really touching these other controls just yet. Large movements to small movements. You know, much like this guy right here. You know, these, whenever it comes to rigs, whenever I'm working on a rig, I always like to identify the main controls, I guess you can say, and then the controls are going to add some detail after the fact. And those guys add detail after the fact. Main movements, the main areas that are going to really sell the basic large movements of things. And then, there we go. That's feeling good. And then you can add some detail to things. Okay, so let's add a little bit of that detailing like I was talking about. I think these hips will be up a little bit there. That's nice. Get this guy to move. I think we can get more of a nice C shape. And again, I doubt that we'll be able to actually see this in particular pose. Remember, we're kind of coming through the hallway at this point. And the idea is that he drops down from the rafters. Let's see, yeah, that's good. Maybe add a little bit more of C shape with that. Cool. You know, there's some guys that when they animate and say their character is coming off screen, I just noticed that here. You know, our hips are going that way, but this should be going the other direction. I can kind of change that, fix that with that. Needs be. How does that look? Okay. So if a lot of animators, when they have a character coming off screen, they won't really worry too much about posing out that character, you know, right before they come on screen. I'm not into that. I like to actually pose my character. It just helps me get a sensation of what they're going to look like right as they're walking into, right before they get onto screen. Kind of helps me with that energy, changing shapes. Like right here, you see the arm is facing down like this, and then we get a nice change of shape with that right there. Let's move this in a little bit so we can kind of really get that line of action coming in. And again, changing that shape to boom. So this guy is going to swing out that way as we come down and make that really strong impact. So what I like to do now is just make sure I key everything. Everything has a key. S, S, S. All right. Let's add a little bit of settle. So right here, you know, think of it like a bouncy ball. This is definitely going to go somewhere. So let's have him go back. Then compress. I want to keep this on. You know, make sure that he's within this line of action here. And you know what? This is nice that we have the character looking, but I don't want him to look just yet. I want him to kind of look up. So here, we're just going to shift, middle mouse button, drag over here, hit a key. We want to make sure that everything is moving here, and we'll offset. We'll definitely offset. What I mean by that is that, you know, the arm is moving, the hand is moving at the same time as the body, because it's just one single pose. We'll get that. We'll make sure that it's not doing that. Push this arm down here, make this feel like this is a rippling effect. And I like to, like I said, I'm gonna have that hand, that face look up. But what I like to do, again, grabbing all these guys, key it, move over. I want to make sure that we are feeling as if this line of action is, you want to keep an axis. And this is what I'll show you. Go to front. Now this helps me out because this is just an orthographic view. So here, adjust this a little bit. Yeah, a little bit more natural there. So the head, if you look at the head right here, he goes a little bit off axis. We want to correct that. We want to fix that. So if I were to just step through, now that's feeling a little bit better. It's a little bit closer to what I was expecting it to see. And then what we can do is the same thing. Grab the head. Make sure that we're in the same spot. There we go. Looks like we're floating there. Let's fix that. Oh, it's because we don't have this guy. So grab that. And this happens sometimes, you know. That's why we have GUIs. You know, sometimes the character's all bent up and everything like that. It's hard to grab one of those controls. So we can go back, grab the GUI like I did here, the head and the neck. And I'm just going to shift mouse button, move that over, hit S, and then these two spots should be the same. With the head, that is. And I want them to look up. But of course, I don't want to have just the head move. So we can give just maybe a little bit of the body to just give some action. And I think it'll be really cool if we change something, you know, like in the hand right here. Like maybe he makes a fist. And maybe this arm goes back. Just enough to make the body feel alive. My idea is that I want to have him make a, you know, like he pounded his fist with this guy. Remember, the camera comes in tight. And from here I want to have him like make a fist, like he's like, all right, time to fight. I'm going to give you a wallop. I always, you know, like most people, I grew up with, watching Batman shows and things like that. And I always remember the silly type of, oops, I went off a key there. Let's move that back. I'll move there. That's giving me problems right there. The silly kind of language that they used. So I want to make sure that I have, there we go. There we go. Okay. So that key is right there. I always think of the silly kind of, you know, slang that they use. We're going to give him a wallop. The funny things that pop in your head when you're animating. I tell you. Okay, so I'm going to focus on this fist right here. Of course, right now, you know, we have that paddle hand, and we'll fix that. Not a problem. You know, let's talk really quick about hands and animating the hands. You know, I mentioned before, the hands are such a integral part of the pose. But when it comes to actually animating, you know, posing out the fingers, we want to find a way to make things, you know, go fast for us. So I'm okay with grabbing all the controls in the finger and curling it up like this to start with, but I'm not a fan of saying, you know, that's it, boom, that's a fist, at all. Actually, I think that it's a start. It helps you get there, and then you really have to refine from there. Because it's you really want to have a nice, appealing pose, and that is one of the core tenets, one of the core principles of animation: appealing poses. They used to call it appealing drawings, and that's been changed to poses, to appeal, or simply just appeal, because you know, animation is not just drawings anymore. However, the practice still remains. You want to feel appealing, and you know, what is appealing? You want to be able to look at it and say, you know, that, you know, by design, that feels strong. It feels as if, you know, more so than just things, you know, colliding with each other. It feels like, hey, that's a nice, even distributed hand pose, looking strong. See how that looks from the front there. Yeah, see, that's better. That's better. And I'm already getting excited thinking about how I can, you know, maybe, ooh, that's cool. Get some really nice motion moving into that pose. Maybe he kind of flails his hand out. And we got this weird pose right here that we actually don't need. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Here we go. When it comes up, let's really make him feel like he bounced up there. Really made that impact. Boom! And the initial impact, we can really push that even more. Push this down like he really pounded hard to the concrete. Change the head so that it looks like he really is looking at his impact point. There we are. We can even sink this into the ground just a hair to show some impact with this. Now what am I doing here? Just adding, we want to make it feel as if it rotated, like it's not just made of stone, like it actually rotated off of the knuckle. And we can move that and copy here. And essentially what I'm looking at is just like right there. I want to make it feel as if it just, there we go, just kind of rocked just a little bit. And right here we'll back it up. What I'm essentially looking at, there we go. I don't want to make it feel as if it moved from the wrist, because that's what the control right there is doing. The control is moving it from that area. However, these controls are not always where I want to have that action move from. Like in this case, I want to make it feel as if it's coming off right off that knuckle right there. So here it feels like it's rotated, it pushed down, and then it just kind of rotated off of this guy right there. Okay, that's feeling pretty good. And now settling into this pose, when he looks up, I would like to have him do more than just look up. I like to have some sort of settle into this as well, even though the camera's kind of crash zooming in. Let's take all of our poses here, all of our controls, make sure there's a S on everything, key on everything. You know, of course, if you play it, whoa, way too fast. But I have my poses, and like I said, I'm going to worry about that once I start getting into some of the actual timing. And you know, actually thinking here, so I'm actually going to do a pose in between this and this one because there's so much, you know, beautiful action that's happening, but it's almost like a smear frame. And I very, very rarely consider any of these kind of in-betweens, you know, smear frame areas as if it's like a key pose. So and right here, actually, I'm going to, this is a little bit of a detail, however, it is so very important. The hand, this hand right here, I want to add just a little bit of movement there, kind of like it collapses in. And again, grabbing all keys and moving it, totally fine, totally fine. However, then you have to go back in and detail it out. There we go. It goes such a long way. If anybody has taken a class with me or saw one of my other tutorials, I can't stop talking about how much hand poses is so important. It's kind of like a broken wheel or record, excuse me, broken record. So let's take a look at it from this perspective. Then it's going to open back up. You know, I'm already seeing how I can do some really nice additional settling, kind of like polishing stuff. That's where it gets exciting. Let's see if I can move this guy up. Maybe, here we go. And I'm going to add just even more. Say he just rotates up. Oops. Make sure that there is a key here for this guy. Because what I'm going to do is there we go. When he looks up, I want a little bit of a settle with that too. Maybe some rotation with that. There we go. Let's add a little bit of compression, the feeling of compression with the foot here. And again, this is just some detailing type of stuff, but really goes a long way. Really goes a long way. Makes things feel a little bit more organic. And what I'll be getting into after that is how we can break things up. This feels a little bit broken here. You know, I know that we're going for this big compression, but let's make things feel. There we go. And then we can have, you know, the foot kind of move up a little bit here. Bang. I don't want the knee to be facing out. I'd rather have the knee face in a little bit here. Let's actually have him go forward here. You know, keep on this line that is his center of mass. Cool. Okay, this is feeling good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it from here, and in the next chapter we're going to be talking about adding some breakdown poses for this guy, some in-betweens, and getting a little bit of a sense of timing. And then once we do that, we're going to export it, get into the game, see how things are feeling good, and then we can do a polishing pass on that, in which we essentially polish to the camera. So with that, see you guys in the next chapter.